Hey there, welcome to the Posit Data Science Hangout. I'm Libby Heron, and this is a recording of our weekly community call that happens every Thursday at 12 p.m. US Eastern Time. If you are not joining us live, you miss out on the amazing chat that's going on. So find the link in the description where you can add our call to your calendar and come hang out with the most supportive, friendly, and funny data community you'll ever experience. Can't wait to see you there.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday and welcome to the Hangout. I'm filling in for Libby today, if you can't tell. So if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm Rachel. I lead customer marketing at Posit, and I'm so excited to bring in our featured leader today, Kevin Dalton, senior data scientist at Great American Insurance Group. And Kevin, would you be able to introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about the work that you do today, as well as something you do for fun?
Sure, absolutely. Welcome everybody. Excited to be here at the Hangout. I've been a big fan for a lot of years. My name's Kevin. I'm a insurance data scientist. So, what does that mean in practice? It means I do a lot of work with actuaries. Insurance companies like to consider themselves as really old school data science. We've been doing this for a long time. My background was originally in economics. I was trained as an economist, financial economics. I worked in the insurance industry for many years, and I took off some time to become a professional skydiver. So I worked as a working skydiver for about 15 years, and which is pretty fun, not as glamorous as well paid as you might imagine. And now I've been back working in insurance, data science focused areas for about 6 years. So that's kind of a brief history about me. I work for a Great American Insurance Group. We're a very large American insurer, and I work in the predictive analytics, business data predictive analytics group, and we are what's generally referred to as like a corporate resource. So underwriting groups, we're a very decentralized company, can come to us for their data science and analytics needs. We have several different groups, one of which builds what would be considered sort of traditional insurance actuarial models. That's our bread and butter. How do we price? How do we segment? How do we market? Those kind of things. But we also have, I think, some of the more exciting things now, which are computer vision and natural language processing, agent models, in the AI sense of that as well. So that's what I do day to day. I'm an individual contributor, so half of my time is really spent between theory, and then half of it's spent between sort of implementing that. I'm also big into MLOps now, so hopefully that wasn't too much or too
Oh,
fast.
that's
But
That's great. I think that's the first professional skydiver we've had
yeah,
as a featured
yeah.
leader. Are there any other professional skydivers in the chat? I think some people maybe want to go skydiving with you.
It's a good time. Yeah. Oh, and what do I like to do for fun? I actually am a big kind of nerd about programming and stuff like that. So I've been writing a lot of code recently, but I have little kids, and I like to go out and be outdoors with them. So I live in Boulder, which, if you know anything about Boulder, you know it's all everyone's outdoors with their dogs all the time. So it's fun.
Love it. Well, Kevin, I had the privilege to get to meet you a few months ago at the PositConf registration desk, and I just want to say thank you for your kind words about the Hangout. And I was looking back at my notes on my phone because I can't remember anything from conf. I did on my phone. But I was like, get Kevin on as a featured leader, lots of exclamation points, so or exclamation marks. So thank you for being
No
here.
problem. Big fan of big fan of our studio and sort of the our Posit now. I remember when I was sitting there when I told Connor this. I was sitting there when they announced it, and I was like, "This is so smart. I'm so glad they're doing this. I think you guys have done amazing work for the community, and I've been involved with the art community for a long time. And you guys have, you guys are doing the, you guys are doing the work that needs to be done. I really appreciate it."
Well, thank you. One of the other notes that I had from that conversation, though, was around some conversation we had at that desk around little p and big P production. And I think
Okay.
that's something I want to talk about today.
Yep.
Before we even do that, what does it actually mean to put models into production at an insurance company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate it. For you'll see, and I've seen this a lot. I mean, you'll see from the very, very unsophisticated to the very sophisticated. So, a model for an insurance company can be just a very simple linear model, or it can be something very, very sophisticated, telematics type model. And you'll see most of that's sort of heavily weighted towards the simple linear models. We're trying to segment different risks based on different classifications. I always use the sort of blue cars are better than red cars kind of thing, right? Right. If we know about or young drivers, those kind of things. And great. And we have this great analysis. Now, how do we get it on the road? How do we put that out there? For a long time, insurance models were very static. And some of them still are. They have to be in the US, they have to go before a regulator that says this. So it was okay to hard code them or put them in a spreadsheet or put those sort of coefficients in there. So that could be being in production, right? You could get a data set every month and say, hey, score this for me. And that would be that. Now it's moving more towards automated production, automated inference to sort of cloud-centric um, real-time inference engines where an underwriter, for example, can input the data into an underwriting system, and part of that underwriting system takes that data and hits an inference engine and gives them a score back. So that's where we're moving. That's where I see the industry moving, but a lot of it is still, sometimes my production system is a notebook I give new data to. So, but that way, whatever works. So we're moving towards that. But those are never notebooks are hard to productionalize, as I'm sure you all know, right? And it's not something that's easy to go back and then say, why did we do this? Which is where we want to be now. But that's what it means for insurance companies.
Thank you. How do you actually like explain that to people at the company that there's this need for two different types of production?
I I've read. It's a great question. I haven't really had to explain it. I think that
Okay.
the need has just been so obvious to everyone that like, why does it take so long to get something back? Why are we waiting? Why is it hard? It doesn't have to be, but you have to be willing to do the engineering, put the systems in place, think about the tools you're going to use, uh, Posit Connect, Posit Workbench, whatever it's going to be, or you're going to code it yourself. I think that's more of my communication role of that is as to how we do it rather than why. Everyone wants to go faster. Everyone wants to do, I guess what I didn't come up with this, but I really like it. Analytics at speed. So everyone wants to go faster, and you can't go faster unless you have this productionalized pipeline.
Thank you. I'm starting to see a lot of questions coming into Slido.
Okay,
I'm having to get back into my multitasking mode that Libby is
sure.
good at. But Edward, I see you asked a question that has had lots of upvotes here. Do you want to jump in next?
Hey, y'all
Hey.
hear me?
Yes.
All
Hey,
right. Let me go to Slido, get the words. So a lot of companies are integrating like large foundation models like LLMs into their
yep.
like processing and analytics pipelines. But as an owner of an old computer and at a company that's kind of like AI adverse, I do a lot of my work with LLMs on small language models that can run on my local machine. And I get some great effect out of it. It's smaller, but have you guys in a large company found any application for smaller language models in like production pipelines?
Not to um, not specifically those smaller trained models. Certainly, I kind of do some of that for fun. I just got a NVIDIA DGX Spark myself, right? So I've got a little ability to kind of run these small models, and I'm trying that out. Ours are bigger at this point, I think, just because we have enterprise resources. But I I second all the things that you said. I think that's really cool that you're doing that. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank
Let
you.
me see if
I
anything
see
else.
I see some questions coming in about skydiving,
Oh
actually.
yeah.
And we want to go over two of those. But one was an anonymous question that was, are there any lessons from the skydiving experience that you apply to your data science work?
Absolutely. I talk about that all the time. So I'll kind of link these two because I see somebody said, what does a professional skydiver do? So um, most professional skydivers teach, so they take tandem. I'm sure if you've seen it, a lot of people have interacted with the tandem, right? You go to a skydiving thing and we hook you up like you're a baby Bjorn, and we go to the airplane and we jump out. There's two of us, one parachute kind of thing. So that's kind of the day-to-day bread and butter. What I did a lot was just because my background is, I did a lot of sort of military instruction, so teaching military parachuting. That's my background. And I always say that most of it is like guidance counselor. Skydiving is pretty easy. It looks like you're doing a lot, but mostly you're just falling, which everyone can do. Trust me, gravity takes over for that. And but most of it is, sort of the psychology of that. And so that has kind of come over to a new skill for me. Well, it's a new skill for me. Something I've been working on a lot is the people side of data science, of trying to understand my customers, trying to understand my coworkers. There are a lot of, and I mean this in the best possible way, there are just a lot of quirky people in data science, and they're just awesome and good to work with, but the communication styles are so different sometimes. So like being able to work with so many, being able to see so many different people and talk to them in skydiving has really helped me do that. So I wouldn't have traded it. The people skills that I've learned has been very good. So, um, but mostly I just am a human carnival. Mostly I was a human carnival ride. So if that makes sense.
I love it. I can imagine you have people who get up there and maybe need to be talked into it a little bit.
I was used to tell them, I'm like, I'm not going to make you go, but just remember the skydive's free. It's the plane ride you paid for. So I'm helpful. You're more than welcome to ride back down with the plane, but we're keeping your money.
Well, I see there is another anonymous question I'm going to jump to that
Sure.
was, what recent innovative ML models in the insurance sectors have you brought live if you're allowed to share?
Um, yeah, I am. I think some of the things that I think are innovative are, we have been doing a lot of work with sort of Bayesian hierarchical models in the insurance space, and actually getting that to work at scale is something that's been near and dear to my heart. We have some very weird distribution insurance. So if you think about, if I could put my statistics geek hat on here for a second, we have very non-normal things, real distributions that are very right skewed. Most insurance policies are zeros. They don't have any losses, but then the ones that do can be very right skewed. And so being able to put that together in a Bayesian framework and get that to work at scale has been something that's been near and dear to my heart, really challenging to do, especially since we have things like the Tweety distribution, which some of you may not know about, which are no closed form solutions. So we have to do it all numerically. So we've been working on that. That's really cool. There are, as you can imagine, a lot of great we were working on natural language processing before it was really cool, before there was chat gpt, so chat gpt and those kind of things, the original sort of bart models, because we take a lot of text, a lot of unstructured documents, and so we've been working on those to get those on the road, but those are really cool. So um,
Thank you. As
yep.
someone who's not a data scientist, I've noticed that whenever Bayesian is mentioned, there's like this community around it that gets very excited. And I was wondering, like, why is it like that? Or can you explain to me a little bit more about what it is?
Yeah, I think it's it's just sort of I look at it as sort of a probabilistic program. It's a different way. The statisticians, I guess, the sort of non way, or the non-familiar way to look at it is there's two camps. There's this frequentist camp and there's Bayesian camp, which I don't think is true that much anymore because I think graduate statistics programs are pretty much sort of this probabilistic Bayesian framework goes goes a long way. You'll see it in, I think it's become super popular because of Richard McElrath's book Statistical Rethinking like has come back, and you see this and a lot of different non-statisticians have picked, non-data scientists have picked it up, and epidemiology, and it's just the right way to look about things. And it's just one of those things I think you're passionate about. Like I'm very passionate about it. And I always explain to people, I go, everyone's a Bayesian. It's how you cross the street. You're like, well, here's my prior, and then here's likelihood. And I get a big kick out of people explaining it to me, like, oh, what's your modeling strategy? And they're like, well, I have a thought and then I have some data, but then I'm going to do this. I go, okay, so you've just described a prior and a likelihood. Why don't we just do it that way? But it's always been super hard to do unless you want to do some toy example. But now it's not. Well, it's still hard to do, but now we can do non-toy examples. But there's only one art community I've found more, I guess, passionate than the Bayesian group, and that's the spatial group. They're fun too. So
Thank you. I always
yeah,
love hearing about the things that people are very passionate about.
yeah.
Michael, I see you asked a question over in Slido. Do you want to jump in here next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, I've been using R for, gosh, I don't know, at least 15 years.
All right.
And, the firm I am at now, I started, we were fairly small, maybe 70 people or so. Now we're close to 1,000. And so I had the luxury at that point of kind of being able to dictate what we use. So, most of a lot of the core infrastructure was R. But, I think, I feel like I'm in a bit more of a minority now. And so, trying to integrate workflows for people who are more focused on Python, things like Reticulate can get you pretty far, but sometimes that only takes you so far. So I'm just curious to hear from you or others, even in chat, of people who are at its core kind of spend a lot of time in R, but to the extent that you need to kind of work with folks who are maybe more Python, like I'm kind of at that point where do I feel like I need to force myself to just get better at Python and come to terms with that, or if people have found other ways that are effective at maybe compartmentalizing, using certain things for what they're good at. But again, it's hard because, if everyone's not speaking exactly the same language, then there's some frictions there. So especially when it comes to like production and deployment, like the research maybe is a little bit less critical. But even then there's frictions because, you'd like to be able to reuse research code as much as possible. And like generative AI certainly makes it easier to refactor that. But anyway, I'm just curious if there's strategies you found effective at kind of like bridging the gap effectively.
That's a great question, and I don't know if I have any great thing about strategies. I can tell you what I do. I don't. I use a lot of Python. I use a lot of R, and I go back and forth between the two. I might maybe I might misquote Emil here when I think we were talking about it a couple of months ago. He said the difference between R and Python is which flavor of C wrappers you prefer, and I kind of look at it the same way. I always just tell people like, what's the right tool for your job, right? And sometimes it's R and sometimes it's Python. So I guess people like that thought that was a funny joke, but I think it's true. To me, I learned in C a million years ago when dinosaurs walked the earth, and I'm like you. I started using R when it was basically S plus, before there was even R Studio, and to me, they seem very similar and they seem very, very familiar to me. I'll tell you, my strategy locally, recently has been saying use Positron. And I have to admit that when it came out, I started using it. I guess as soon as they released it, I downloaded and built it from source. And I have a little note, I'm going to frame it one day. It was like, who is this for? Right? Because I just know how passionate people are about RStudio, and I used VS Code a lot, and now I finally completely 100% get it. And I'm working on a project now that is same repo. It's got UV in it. It's got RV in it, which I'm a huge fan of, right? And then Positron has just got both environments going. I'm writing Python code. I'm writing R code. I like to tell people, I go, maybe 20 years from now, there'll be two dialects of the same sort of data science language. But I tell people, if I can just circle back to your question, my strategy is to use the right tool for the job. Sometimes that's Python, and often it's R. And if if you sit down and think about it, I think you can accomplish the same things in both languages. Just what's more convenient for you to do that. But thanks for your question. It's a great question.
Thanks, Kevin. And I was just about to ask you about Positron, so I'm glad that you already covered that there.
Yeah.
What was the main thing that got you from who is this for to using it?
I just think I started to use it, right? Because, I tried with, I don't know what the audience's experience has been with VS Code and R, right? And I had high hopes for it, right? Because I use a lot of Jupyter notebooks and Python, and I really liked that. But it never really worked well. It just was hard to use. And so I think Positron and the work that team has done to make it very R centric as well as Python centric has been great. It's my daily driver. I use VS Code less and less. Find out myself using VS Code less and less unless I have just a pure Python, with C kind of focus group on it. But I knew I could do the same thing in Positron. So I think it's the next. I joked with Connor once. I was like, you guys are going to be maintaining RStudio forever, still though, right? Because it's such a passionate crowd around it, and I think it's great. And I grew up on it, but I used RStudio for a long time, and I thought this was really good. But I think Positron's the next step, and um, yeah. But I did wonder who it was for. I was like, man, who is? And I said that because I'm like, I just know people who they were like, you will take RStudio when you pry it from my cold dead hands, right? Like, so, and I'm sure I'm sure they're out there. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I love our studio too.
We love it.
Actually, while we're talking about tools a bit, could you share a little bit about what your tool stack looks like at Great American Insurance Group?
Sure. We have a lot of, we are building out our, to the extent I can talk about this, we're building out our sort of Posit workbench and team deployment now. We, like a lot of enterprises, are heavily invested in Snowflake now. So that's primarily what our tech stack looks like. But we have the ability to sort of individual contributors have the ability to work locally, as well as that, which we're trying to move that over in the MLOps. And so my into the weeds, I alluded to it a little bit. My tech stack now seems to be a lot of Python with UV and Rust, which I'm a huge fan of, and R with RV, which I know is sort of still kind of newish, but for me, it works really, really well. Better than, dare I say it, better than RIM. And I really like it. So that's my tech stack, and it kind of built up from there. But I do write some Fortran. I still write some C. So it kind of compilers in there and go with that. But
thank you. I might need some help from people in the chat sharing the links to those packages. But so you actually run Posit within Snowflake, is that right?
We do, yeah. We run it as a containerized service inside Snowflake. And that allows us to, it's a great idea. I think, we're big Snowflake users, and Snowflake is super powerful from a data engineering side and from inference side, and it can do a lot of good things. And Snowflake Container Services is great now. You can run Python, you can serve Python models from there, you can serve R models from there. Once you get the once you get some of the idiosyncrasies of the way Python treats a list and R treats a list, you can get that figured out. But feel free to hit me up if you ever run into that roadblock. I spilled a lot of brain power on that, but
Thank
you
you.
can do it, and it's great. And you get all the authorization, you get all that for free, which is kind of why we like it. But that's good. Our hope is to move to the full Posit team stack, and to to an actual deployment of hey, this would be from uh, from a small P deployment to a big P production environment kind of thing. So
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you.
yeah.
And thanks everybody for sharing all those links in the chat. I really appreciate it. Frank, I see you had asked a question a little bit ago. Do you want to jump in here next?
Yep, I can unmute. Sorry about that. Also, hi
Okay,
everyone.
that's
I'm
our delay of we have to try and find people to unmute.
all good. Yeah, I'm thankful to have found this group. I was referred here last week, so it's good. So
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hi, Frank.
my question for Kevin is: I come from a data engineering and AI engineering background, and one of the first things that we did when deploying models is we would put guardrails around them, just as you know, in case it starts spitting out nonsense that nothing falls apart. What sort of guardrails are you using that are specific to insurance to guard against that kind of drift?
Let's see what I can talk about. So general things that you might understand, right? Like, so we have a model monitoring process that is working with as real data comes in to make sure that it meets certain standards. As the data crosses from the threshold from the data engineering to the model inference threshold, it meets certain requirements. And there's a couple of different packages out there, both Python and R, that do really, really well to sort of funnel that in and make sure that everything's good to go. And a lot of it, we sort of stress the data scientists and the developers, your model can't be brittle to these sort of things, right? Like, if you're predicting blue cars, red cars, it can't break when somebody says space shuttle, right? It can't just break and
Yeah.
then say, I don't know what to do with the space shuttle. I mean, it has to fail intelligently. So we do that.
Right.
And we have some different kind of insurers have different sort of standards. So health insurer, which I'm not, right? They're going to have very specific legal and ethical standards around
Mhm.
what kind of data they can use and what sort of model drift is acceptable to that. We have less of that, we're insuring, buildings and cars and stuff like that. But we're also very sensitive to models in all stripes being just quote unquote discriminatory. So we have some setups around that. So a lot of it, I would think, to answer your question, is on three fronts: sort of data, and then make sure that the inference itself isn't out of line with what we would expect, or that it
Mhm.
doesn't fail brittly, right? It fails
Yeah.
intelligently if it can do that. And then model checks of discrimination. One of the things that I've been working on lately is to, speaking of generative AI, is to use generative AI to build synthetic data sets that test it, that test the model drift, and are designed to be edge cases and are designed to come up with clever ways, almost like having it write unit tests for you, but now it writes
Mhm.
model monitoring tests. So there's a whole another no another so beyond unit testing for software and models, and beyond integration tests, model tests, right? That are
Mhm.
using things like Y data accumulator. Those guys are doing great things with generating simulated data, synthetic data sets, using generative AI to bang on it basically and make sure that it falls apart. But that's a great question. Thanks.
If I could have a follow-up about the
Yeah.
intelligent data generation, do you think
Yeah.
that'll be the future when it comes to test-driven development?
I do, but I'm not an expert in the field. I mean, that's the road I'm going down. I think it's a great, I'm not a developer by training. Certainly I've picked up a couple of things and I'm always struggling to sort of put my education out there. Unit test, which is probably simple for a lot of people. And now it is, but for me, it took me forever to bang my head on. And now it's so easy, right? Like I just am
Mhm.
developing and I've got two developers working beside me that happen to be generative AI. And I'm like, okay, great, write a unit test for this. And it's going as we're doing. And I think that's, people are like, oh, that you can have an opinion about that. My opinion is that it just makes me way better as a developer,
Oh yeah.
or it makes me a developer period versus whatever I am now. But yeah, the synthetic data I think is fascinating, right? Because even well-tested models I see fail because of edge cases. And so the ability to kind of go out there and hit those edge cases, I think is super cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
And too.
That's a great question.
Um, I think so. Sorry, trying to read the questions at the same
No problem.
time. Isabella had shared one with me that she saw in the Slido. But while we're talking about synthetic data, what are some of your favorite public data sources for trying to quantify and model things like geopolitical risk?
I don't I don't do anything with geopolitical risk. I mean, I think I know where you're going with that. Like there are insurance policies, insurance carriers that
Yeah.
um, do that as a specialty. I've never worked in that. I've worked in a lot of different areas of insurance, but like I've never worked in anything like that. We do use a lot of public. I use a lot of public data sources about certainly spatial statistics. So there's a lot of great APIs out there. We have a large we have a large crop insurance division, so there's a lot of public data sets available for that. So I've much um, recent hiccups aside, the US government produces a lot of spatial data, a lot of data specific to what you use, but I'm always searching. I would actually turn this question around. Why don't you tell me some great sources you're using?
Yeah, we would love to hear that in the chat. And I guess on
um,
the same topic, I think there was another Slido question that was if you want to learn more about using the tools you mentioned for building synthetic data, where would you recommend that people start? Are there specific packages that you really love, or like other than just Googling build synthetic data set?
um, No, I think Hugging Face is a great place. There's some great sort of smaller models there. It's part of the reason much to my wife's chagrin, of like, what is this package in the mail? Bought my um, NVIDIA DGX local supercomputer, and to put these models into there and run them locally. So I wasn't paying $200 a month on that, but to generate these. There used to be a package, a company, I think it's called Y Data now, but they used to, I mean, they still do it, but it used to be called Pandas Profiling. Now it's called Y Data Profiling. And they would take in sort of Pandas data sets and give you, here's a profile of it. Now they've sort of added AI to their name and pivoted over to, we help build generative AI synthetic data sets. That's a good place. That's where I started. I'm sure there are better places. Also, if I can make a plug for it, I think some of the new Codex GPT, I've been working on that as a sort of large scale model to kind of guide me with that. But Hugging Face is a great place to find some of these models, I think.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I see Trupti, you asked a question over in Slido. Can I call you in here next?
Hey, thank you, Rachel, for picking my question. So, hi, Kevin, Trupti here.
Hi,
Hi, sorry, my video is off.
no problem.
Yeah, I worked for an auto insurance client in back in 2019, and we worked on identifying underwriting frauds like misstated mileage, incorrect number of drivers, or incorrect zip code to lower down their premium amount. And we use clustering techniques to identify those like clusters wherein there is a fraud. So with the AI evolving, what kind of techniques are being recently used? I would like to love more on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I haven't worked in that recently. So
Mhm.
I'm probably, the last time I worked on it was probably around the same time you worked on it, right? So use the same
Okay.
sort of clustering techniques. So unfortunately, I don't, I'm just going to have to say, I don't really know what's being done with that lately because I've just
Okay.
been working on other things, but it's a great question. I'm sure that some um, I'm sure that some very clever people are doing that, because fraud is a huge problem. Like, we build fraud models, like as banks do, and those kind of things, right? To find those sort of things. And the level of sophistication is just going up and up and up. But
Right.
I haven't used anything generative AI to look for underwriting fraud, so I can't tell
Oh,
you.
okay. I see.
Thanks for
Yeah.
your question,
Yeah.
though.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I guess
And
while we're talking about AI as well, Zach had asked a question. There's asterisks, so I'll ask it. But broadly, how is AI affecting your day-to-day work in the insurance industry?
Well, it's affecting the insurance industry. I can't speak for the whole industry. I mean, I see it affecting it day to day a lot. We're there's a lot of startups, a lot of sort of I guess insure tech is what I call it, our little branch of fintech. They're just, thick on the ground, people starting these, especially for um, unstructured data. We generated a lot of paper back in the day, and now we generate a lot of PDFs, and the ability to get those and process them quickly is a huge. Most money's being thrown at that. I think from a data science perspective, it's changed my day to day tremendously. Like I said, I both theory now and on the development side, I sit there with a one or two, at least one, probably two different models running along beside me, and I think it's not ashamed to admit it, because I'm certainly not a great developer or a great coder, or even a great statistician, but I'm constantly using those tools to make me better at what I do. And so I think it's changed for everyone. Um,
Really?
Certainly in the development there. Um, you know, you can see it in the tools that are out in Positron, right? Like, that are being implemented there. Um, I, I'm racing to, I mean, I think it's a huge deal as for your career to keep learning, certainly in this field, but it's just added, trying to learn the basics of it, how to learn and train my own models, and how to run my own models locally, and how to generate your own agentic AI and train your own agents. Lane Graph, Lane Chain are really great with that too. And I don't do that just because I like it, although it is fascinating to me. But I do it to say, okay, how can I make uh, be a better data scientist, better
Yeah.
developer, approach this problem? How else would I do this? And I think some of the foundational models out there are getting spookily good at it. I mean, for a glorified um, for a glorified piece of linear algebra, it's getting pretty good.
Mm.
Isabella thought that was funny. So,
Thank you. I I'm gonna ask this question a little bit earlier than we normally do at the Hangout, but
okay.
I love getting to hear all the career advice that is shared
Oh,
from featured leaders.
mm.
And I'd love to ask you, is there a piece of career advice that's been especially meaningful to you, whether it's something that you've heard from a mentor or you've given this advice to other people?
Yeah, I think that the bit of advice that I think that is most important to me and that I would give is, especially with the tools that are out there now, um, the, what you really need to focus on is your sort of business area. You know, if you want to work in insurance, learn about insurance. The data science, the statistics of that is there. You can learn it. Keep learning that, always that, but really focus on understanding that. When I learned data science, sort of came back in from skydiving to learn data science, I always heard that, well, domain expertise, and I like, whatever, right? Like, we're here to build models and do theory and get the math right and get the statistics right. But I think I underplayed it. Now I think I'm an individual contributor. I enjoy the theory. I enjoy the models. I hope that's what I get to stay doing and developing. But, the ability to understand the problem itself is probably still remains understated. So, keep learning and become a domain, get as much expertise in your domain as you can. Those would be my advice. But
Yeah,
I Sorry, go
How
ahead.
would you advise people do that before they've gotten a chance to do a job in that industry?
I don't think you can. There's no way to bootstrap your way into it. I think for people joining data science in the industry,
Uh-oh. We might need to go to somebody else for this question temporarily while we get Kevin back. I'm curious in the chat, does anybody have some words of wisdom here to share on getting domain experience before you have a chance to actually work in that industry?
Yeah, I've been a professional recruiter for like more than 30 years. I would recommend everything. Send notes to people saying, hey, can I shadow you for a day and call off on that day? I saw something recently I just loved. Reading gets you the general stuff. Articles get you the applied stuff. Read, study articles, go to meetings, meetups, form a group if you have to, but don't take anything of like, oh, gee, you can't do it. You can do anything, okay? Put your energy, put your enthusiasm into it, and it's amazing what you can actually do. And as a person that's hired more than 15,000 people, I can tell you, I don't necessarily hire for skills, I hire for passion, drive, enthusiasm. So if you say, hey, Russ, I did this on Saturday when I was on my own time, da, da, da. Guess what? You're screaming at me that you're interested. And I want to transition into da, da, da. Great. No, I didn't fire 15,001. No, that's not even close.
Amazing.
So yeah, there are lots of ways. Read, study, join groups, shadow people, all that kind of stuff, so that when you walk in, you can do it. And then the other thing, I'll just make this really, really quick. The extreme majority of people, when they apply for a job, send a resume. And their resumes are crappy, by the way. That's a whole other issue. But the people who get hired are going to send a resume, letter of recommendation, stuff they posted on GitHub, LinkedIn. So they're going to show, hey, I care, I'm passionate, I know how to do this. I'm walking in. I might never have gotten paid to do this, but ta-da,
Yeah.
I'm Babe Ruth and I'm going to hit a grand slam every time you give me the ball.
Thank you, Russ. Arsenis, I see you had your hand raised, and then I see Kevin's back, so we'll jump back to him too. But Arsenis would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so I agree with everything Russ just said about reading everything, joining groups, all that stuff. The one thing that I would add to that is pick a data set that's related and do a small project, as small as it might be. The reason for that is that you begin to understand how the data play into some of the questions that you might have to deal with in the real world. And I say this as a person who kind of has the opposite experience of Russ. He has hired 15,000 people. I have been hired not quite 15,000 times, but I've been through a lot of industries, from aviation to clinical sciences to economics and what have you. So the way that I've been able to successfully go from one industry to another, though I think I'm done doing that. The way I've done that successfully is by just doing small projects before I actually start my job. And that also gives me a little bit of insight into what I still need to learn before jumping in. So it kind of tells you where your weaknesses are as well.
Thank you. As you were saying that, I was getting flashbacks to Ryan's hangout last week talking about his Lego side project, and then he started working at Lego. Kevin, glad to have you back. Are you good now? Hear us?
there you go. Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So what I miss? No, it all sounded like great advice. I think I was talking about it. Like, I don't, I will just add, I think that's all great advice. I haven't used myself of building sort of a portfolio. I see it out there. I don't think it's bad advice. I think if you can, I guess the things that I'm trying to do for myself, and I just will speak for myself, I think I'm trying to get involved in open source. So I think if you can find a hook into the open source software or analytics side of the community that you would like to develop domain expertise, I think you can learn a lot. You can learn about the data, and certainly that gives you an opportunity to show your work as a data scientist, as a developer. So that's all I would add.
That's great. Thank you. Durakshan, can I call you in next for your question? I think this fits in well here too as well. And let me go find you to unmute you. There you go.
Hi everyone.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, so my question is not about the tech stack or the tool that Kevin is using. Like, uh, um,
Oh, I think we may be having some sort of Zoom
that
issue across like Zoom
I want to.
platform because it keeps getting a little choppy, but let's try one more time.
I hope I am audible now.
Here, I'll ask one of your questions for you just while we're having the Zoom issue. But I see Durakshan had asked a question in Slido that was, as an experienced data scientist, which skills would you say are evergreen, irrespective of the tools that you're using? Not really about like tech stack, but skills like soft skills, good data practices.
Yeah, that's an amazing question, and one that I think is very, very good. Like I said, because I think that you can learn the tech, you can learn the statistics, you can learn what you need to know, you can even learn the domain expertise. I think what's going to make people last and allow you to last in the field, if that's your goal, and it's trite, and I know people say it over and over, but it's the people skills. It's the ability to work in a very diverse, and again, I mean no disrespect, and I say no pejorative way, with a quirky bunch of sometimes neurodiverse people who are developers and data scientists and data engineers, and the ability to work with them and communicate with them, I think, is something that will put you in good stead and is very soft skill. I myself have been taking a lot of courses and seeking a lot of mentorship and change management. Some people don't like change, surprisingly enough, right? Like all change is bad change. And so that's their, like, how do you get them over that? How do you move up to that? That I think is so. Well, phenomenal question. Thank you very much for that question.
That is always a big thing for us here, change management. Tell us, what are you learning about change management?
I apply it, I think, in a corporate setting. I mean, I think it's just a great skill to have in life in a corporate setting, right? Like we work across different groups, and sometimes it's, herding cats. People don't like, I don't have to do what you say, et cetera, right? And so the ability to lead without being a lead people without being an appointed leader, or to influence people without being an influence leader, right? I think is extremely important. I can't downplay it enough. And I think if you want to last in the industry, you're either going to have to be so good at writing code and doing data science that your people just can't ignore you, or you're going to have to be able to do most of that in the way, and then be great with people and great with the domain. But honestly, I haven't hired 15,000 people. I have hired some people, right? But I think we can get there on the tech stack. We can get there. I would much rather hire someone who I know I could work with and is going to work with the team well, and I can count on them to have the understanding of soft people skills, and than the person who is just built, the person who's just technically brilliant, but you're just unable to deal with them.
When you say seeking mentorship, what does that mean for you? I think you said something about like seeking mentorship and change management,
I'm going to my boss's boss, the people across from that, and saying, how do we do change management? How do you see it as change management? Who should I talk to? who should I know?
Mhm.
You know, I'm a remote employee, which is great. It works for me and my lifestyle and those kind of things. But I do go in, you know, I travel, I go into the office, and most of what my time is spent there is I'm going and, you know, who's the decision maker here? Um, where's the point of leverage here? We need this particular tech stack. Like, how do I get that done? I think it's just, you know, knowing the people and being able to communicate with them is the key issue. And to seek mentorship is, you know, if I need to know something that I guess the first step is I acknowledge that I don't understand change management. I acknowledge that I'm probably not very good at it. Same thing with the people skills. I probably don't have great people skills, but what do I need to do to improve that? Right. And then I go to people and ask sort of humbly, like, hey, how can I be better?
Well, I would say in the Hangout, you have great people skills. Just saying. Um, but I was just interested in that because we talk about mentorship sometimes, but I know some companies don't have these formal mentorship programs, and I've always wondered, like, how do you go and find a mentor?
Yeah, I think somebody I saw in the chats, right? Like somebody was like, oh, you know, make them just bother them until they say no. That's probably good advice, is that being able to stick to it and, you know, find someone you respect, that you're going to work with, that's going to mesh with you and that you think has got something, and just go ask them. I think people will be more willing than you would expect. Um, probably a
Yeah.
little bit, probably a little bit like dating. Maybe they're more afraid of you than you are of them, right? And so just go and say, hey, how do I do this? I don't know. I think that showing that genuine passion for it and how do I improve myself, people are always going to help you. I'm in even in absence of a formal sort of mentorship program. I think most people probably don't have a formal mentor.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, Michael, I see your hand was raised. Did you have something that you wanted to add to this too?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, somewhat self-effacing humor. You know, I work in risk management. I've been doing this about 25 years, and you know, I've never until fairly recently like made it a point to get out and socialize. I mean, it sort of just happened kind of as part of my job. And so I always sort of just joked about like risk people are sort of antisocial. But I think, you know, in recent years, like I just make a point of like once in a while, I'll reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and say, hey, you want to grab a coffee? And like 9 times out of 10, people are like, yeah, that's great. And so I'm like, actually, maybe I was the antisocial one. And so, yeah, I think people love to talk about what they do. And more often than not, if you know, just kind of reach out to someone who, especially if they're close by, but even if they're not, are more than happy to, you know, kind of make the acquaintance and share about what they do. So I think it works really well.
Thank you. I realized that we are at the top of the hour and I had not been looking at the clock, and I'm out of practice of that, of rapid firing questions to you. But Kevin, if it's okay, I'm going to try and ask two more questions here.
Sure. Go ahead.
I see there was an anonymous question that was, I'm a data scientist, but only apply statistics sporadically. Do you have any strategies or advice for keeping that statistical intuition sharp?
Uh, I'll tell you what I do. I don't know if it's great advice. Is that I have I've got a whiteboard over here about statistical concepts that I want to improve on and learn. And I get a book and I just go through it. I force myself to, um, you know, put pencil to paper and do it. That's the only thing I can do. You're not going to stay sharp until you know, unless you do it over and over again. You have to apply statistics. Come up with a problem. Go get some data, even if it's a small data set, and do that. Um, so
Yeah. Okay, one
not,
more
yep. Go
question,
ahead.
and I think it's from somebody who is an actuary.
Okay.
They asked, how do you partner with actuaries at work? Are there, oops, I just scrolled. Are there things that you need from the actuaries that make your job easier?
I think I partner pretty well. I mean, I have some actuarial education as well, and so um, understanding what understanding the difference between what an actuary does in an insurance company and a data scientist would do in an insurance company, and that they're not always clearly defined. I think understanding those roles and where their educational background is the number one step to communicating with them. But see if I can just make sure that I get the answer to this question right, is because I do think it's very important inside the insurance company because actuaries have a lot to offer. I think understanding that, actuaries have been doing this for a long time and they have some great insights, certainly statistically. And because I say this all the time about GLMs, for example, actuaries were doing GLMs before there were GLMs. Same thing. And they came up with this in the 60s or even before. And, there's a complete one-to-one correlation between, or a one-to-one mapping between the sort of models that they were running and an actual GLM. And so being humble about that, I think is a great way to communicate with them. What are they doing? What do they need? I like to say that part of my job is to build tools for actuaries. So I go to them and say, hey, what can I do to make your job easier? What can I do to make your job more effective as a data scientist? And that's my advice. So, and I see we're out of time, Rachel. So I tried to do that up.
Oh, thank you so much, Kevin, for letting me get through a few more questions
yeah.
there. Thank you all for all the great questions in Slido. I'm sorry we're not able to get to every single thing every week, but Kevin, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your experience.
I'm very humbled to be able to speak to this community. I love the R community, and I think this hangout has been certainly great for me. And you can hit me up on LinkedIn, or I'm not really a big LinkedIn user, but I do check occasionally. So if I can.
But I don't think you've updated your LinkedIn in years.
Yeah, that's true. And
Kevin, I was going to say you have a different company maybe on there. So.
Yeah, and I'm not very good at it. And like I said, if I can be of any help to anybody, it would be my pleasure. But I'm very grateful to be here. And like I said, everyone, I think we should all be very grateful for Posit and the people there that are making R the kind of community that we all hoped it would be. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And maybe one day we'll all go skydiving with you. Who knows?
Maybe.
I just want to do a quick note that there is no hangout next week, but happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I hope you have a great week with your family and friends. We will be back on December 4th with Matt Maloney from the City of Hope. City of Hope is one of the largest cancer research and treatment organizations in the US. And I'm really excited to hear how they're integrating Posit with Epic, their electronic health record. So I hope to see you back on the 4th. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.